Hi, my name's Amy Chaplin. I'm a chef and cookbook author, and today I'm going to show you how to chop every vegetable. Peanut. Peanuts are actually legumes, so really they should be boiled before eating, but we roast them. This is how you open a peanut. You crack down to crack open the end, and then you break it like that. And then inside are two cute little peanuts. That's a peanut. Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts actually grow like this, and you can pluck them off. And they're actually much fresher when you buy them like this at the farmer's market. Take off the end and cut them in half. If they're this small, trim off the bottom and roast them whole. You could eat it raw with the mandolin, so cut off the end, take off any sort of tougher outer leaves, and then just shave it long ways like this. And that can be dressed raw, delicious with olive oil, sea salt, a bit of lemon, or you can cut the bottom off, take off the sort of wilted outer leaves, and then peel each leaf if you want to as well. That's another way to eat it raw, and they can be tossed in a salad like that. Peas. Peas are a spring vegetable, and they're one of the vegetables that you really need to eat freshly picked. They get starchy and lack sweetness when they've been sitting around for a while. The way you shell a pea is you don't need a knife or anything else. You just pop the end like that, run your thumb along the edge, and then you reveal all the peas. That's a pea. Snap pea. A snap pea is like a pea, except that you can eat the whole thing. They're delicious. You can leave them whole, steam, saute, or you could make them look fancy by cutting it on an angle like that, and it looks really pretty. Wakame. Wakame is a sea vegetable that you purchase dried. You need to soak it and then drain it. So what I'm going to do is just cut it into manageable size like this, and then I'm just going to slice down each side of the stem like that and take this out. This can be used in stocks. Cut it across. Now it's ready to be marinated, added to miso soup. You can add it to wherever you like. A little bit of seaweed goes a long way. It's a fantastic flavoring and full of nutritional properties. Garlic. I like to prep garlic by breaking apart all of the different cloves. Then I get my knife and just a tap. And you don't really need to do anything else. Now you can decide how you want to cut it. Take off the end and then thinly slice it. Like that. I leave them whole to roast with the skin on, and then you can have fun squeezing it out to eat it, and it's a much mellower, softer flavor. It's not as pungent at all. The other way is to finely dice it, and I just go like this, in half, sliced, and go like that. Shallot. A shallot is a member of the onion family. It can also be used in place of onions. A lot of people prefer it. I would just cut off the root end and then just score down the full length of the shallot with a knife and peel off the outer layer. And then if I was to use it for something where I'm just like sauteing it, you can just dice it. It's nice and easy. A little bit more manageable than a big onion. You could also slice it lengthways if you wanted to, say, saute it with other vegetables similar shape. Watercress. Watercress grows in water. It is delicious, juicy, and quite peppery. I love it raw in salads the most. I think it adds such a delicious sort of punchy flavor, and you can just pluck off the leaves like that, and of course this is edible too. It's juicy and delicious. If you did want to cook it, chop it up like this and just saute it. It can be put in brothy type soups or ramens. It will just cook like spinach in an instant once it's exposed to heat. Green beans. I prep them just by taking off the stem end, and that's it. Don't cut the other end because it's really pretty, has a nice little point to it. If you wanted to saute, cut it on a nice angle, or you can cut it in bigger pieces if you want to saute it a little longer. If you've got an odd amount left, not enough to make a roasted dish, you can add it to a soup or stew, and you can cut it like this and just add it when you're cooking the celery, say, in a soup. Asparagus. It grows up through the earth, so it's really important to wash it well. It can be gritty. What I would do to prep asparagus is actually just break off the tough end. If you wanted to saute it, I would just cut it on an angle and cook it like that. If you wanted to roast it, I'd leave it whole. You can also cut them on a mandolin like this, and you could eat it raw. This will actually turn green when you cook it, but it's purpley. This is white asparagus, much more rare and difficult to find. And this is just lovely green baby asparagus, really, because it's nice and thin. Fava bean. Fava beans are spring vegetables, absolutely delicious and quite a luxury because they require 2 steps in preparation. You don't need a knife. You just open up each pod and you can see these lovely little beans inside. This needs to be blanched just briefly in boiling water before you slip off the outer skin, and then you've got the beautiful little fava bean, which is absolutely delectable. Scallion. They're a member of the onion family, but they have a milder flavour than a raw onion, so they're delicious on absolutely everything. Take off the root end and then just cut it really thinly on an angle. And you can go all the way. I actually like the green part. It looks really pretty, like that. And this you can keep in the fridge in a jar and sprinkle over your salads, your grains, your soups. It makes everything taste better. Celery. This is how I'd prep a celery. I'd break off each stem that I need like this. The inner ones are much more tender and the leaves can be used as well. They're actually really good in stock. If I was to add it to a salad, cut the bottom off on an angle like this and either cut it really thinly or shave it on a mandolin. If I was to put it in a stew, I would go like this, take off the bottom, take off this, save all these bits. They're really good for a stock. Then I would cut it lengthways, and for, say, a soup, I'd go like this. For a stew, take off the bottom, cut the larger piece in half, and then you can do some nice shapes like that. This just will give you more texture and a different look. Like that. Spinach. Spinach is a very delicate green. It can be eaten raw or cooked. It takes very little to cook it. In fact, if you just pour boiling water over it, you will cook it. If you were to saute it, I would keep these stems because they're nice, but you could cut them off if you like, and then cut them in half and use them, and then just roughly chop. Or leave whole. You can totally leave this whole. It shrinks down so much. But if you just wanted to roughly chop to stir into a soup or a stew at the end of cooking or a risotto, then roughly chopped is good, or torn. Kombu. Kombu is a sea vegetable. What you find in Asian markets is a much stiffer kombu that you can roll and thinly slice, and it can be really cut like in squares, triangles, or these long thin strips. For this one, there's no stem end that I need to cut off, so I'd probably just cut it into even pieces like this and stack them. And I could actually try rolling this to get it to be thin slices. Or you could just cut it in cubes by stacking again. So just keep stacking. And then just like this. You only want a little bit because seaweed is strong tasting. Okra. If you get small ones, you can leave them whole like this, and then all you need to do is just cut off the end where it's dry, and actually you can just cook these whole with some juice. They'll cook down and become succulent and delicious. If you're slicing it, you will come across the sort of viscous juice that is inside, and it comes out more when cooking. So you can saute onions, garlic, ginger, whatever flavors you want, and then add this and saute it, and then add other flavors as well. It's also used in gumbo. Friends in the South love to put it in gumbo. It has like a pretty mild flavor alone, but it lends itself well to spices. That's okra. Nopales. Okay, this is a cactus with very spiky little bits on it that you want to be very careful handling. If you hold it at the bottom, it's a bit safer, but you can wear kitchen gloves or hold it with a towel. And you want to take off these spiky bits, or you can use a peeler. Cut it down the middle and then cut it like this. And it's bright green now, but yeah, it turns a sort of more darker olivey green. It's used in Mexican cooking. It can be grilled, sauteed, but it needs to be cooked for quite a while to get the sort of viscous juice out and then dry out again. Onion. They're different types. This is a cripolini onion, this is a yellow onion, and this is a white onion. I like to cut an onion by taking off the root first and running the knife down the length, long ways of the onion, and then peeling off the outer layer. And then I cut it lengthways and across ways after that. And then I like to cut it like this because it just falls apart nicely, and I like it for just about anything. If you were to roast it, you could leave it in bigger chunks like this, or even whole actually with the skin on. You can just put it in the oven for a really long time. This is like a classic way to just dice, but you just saw your way towards the root, don't go all the way, and then do a few more slices the other way, not going all the way through, whoops. And then you can dice, and it just falls into a dice. And then this obviously can be used to saute, to start a soup, stew, any dish like that. Broccoli rabe. Broccoli rabe is like a delicate broccoli, really. You've got these little florets and delicious brassica leaves. So same member as broccoli, cauliflower, and delicious. Sauteed, roasted even. You can roast it whole like this on a pan with the leaves and they get really crispy. You can also grill that part. The leaves shrivel up a little bit, grilling and roasting, but it's still really tasty. So to steam it, I would just cut off the ends. They can be a little bit woody and tough. And then I would just cut in a couple inch pieces like that. And then just steam it whole. That's delicious. Leave it whole if you're roasting, and do this if you're sauteing or steaming. Endive. Endives can also be purple. Endive is delicious in a salad. In fact, I wouldn't really recommend cooking it or doing it any other way. You can use it as a dipping utensil, as a crudité, but to get the leaves off, you just cut the stem end and then they just start falling off, and you need to recut as you go. But here's one like that, and then you can cut it again. And these are lovely just whole. I think they look beautiful stacked on a plate with this nice citrusy dressing. They're really tasty. If you wanted to slice it thinly for a salad, another way to do it is take the end off, cut it in half, and then I just cut it like, and then just break it up, and you could dress it like that. Radicchio. Radicchio is delicious both cooked and raw, but more commonly you'll find it raw in salads, where you can just peel off the leaves and break them up by hand. No need to cut them. Doesn't look that great cut, I don't think. I think it's actually better just to break up the pieces like this. The only reason I would cut it is if I was cooking it. Saute it with other greens. It's a delicious bitter flavor. So similar to a red cabbage, take out the core and then just cut across ways into any shape you want, but this is good. This is a kind of good way to braise or saute. These are other types of radicchio. Castle franco. Sometimes you see it as pink lettuce, but it's like a pink radicchio. Then there's this one here, which is speckledy. And this is treviso, that can just be broken off like this and used in your salad. Any of these can be cooked, but they're really, really beautiful and tasty raw, and also really juicy. Bok choy. Bok choy is a delicious, juicy green vegetable, really mild flavored. It's not strong like a kale or collard green, say. So to prepare it, you'll always need to take off the bottom, and then the leaves just fall off. And the leaves cook a lot faster than the stem, so separate them like this. Just take off the leaves and cut the stem a little bit thinner than you would the leaves. You can actually leave the leaves whole, but if they're big, you might want to just cut them in half, and then you can cut this on an angle if you want a bit thinner. So that if you're sauteing, you add this first and then just stir the leaves through, and they're done when they're wilted and a deep green color. I love it steamed personally with a nice sesame dressing. It also can be eaten raw. It's really juicy. Yum. Cabbage. Cabbage is also a member of the cruciferous family with broccoli and cauliflower. I like to take off the tougher leaves off the outside. Then I cut off the end just to make it flat, and then cut it in half. And look how beautiful. If I was to roast it, I would cut it in half again, take out the core, and then cut it in like 2 to 3 inch pieces. The other way to do it is to thinly slice and just shave it like this. And this is a nice quick way to make a pickle, because all you have to do is just put salt and vinegar on here, crushed up with your hands, and it turns a beautiful crimson color. You can keep in your fridge for a week, put it on tacos, grain bowls, in sandwiches, whatever you like. Chicory. Chicory is a delicious, slightly bitter, but really, really tasty vegetable that can be used in salads. You find it in the fall usually, and it's really good combined with radicchio, some watercress if you want, a bit of fruit, pear maybe, thinly sliced, cheese. You can just break off the leaves like this. You can use them all. Some are darker green. The ones in the center are lighter green, and they're sort of more tender. I usually just break it with my hands and maybe get rid of like the stem part if you want it all really pretty, sort of fraggly pieces like that. You can also cut it up and cook it. It's really yummy in a soup, like a bean soup, sort of used like escarole. It's a very similar kind of flavor, mildly sort of pungent, but not very strong, especially when you cook it. That's chicory. Mustard greens. Mustard greens are very mustardy. They are extremely strong when eaten raw, and a little bit goes a long way, especially with these bigger leaves. You want to look for very tender, younger leaves if you're going to eat it raw. Tear it off the stem, because the stem's pretty strong, and then just tear them into bite-sized pieces. It's really good with some shaved pear or apple, or even other root vegetables shaved really thin. You need the contrast of the sweetness. You can treat it the same way as you would kale or collard greens, and I don't really bother taking out the stems if I'm cooking it. Just take off the bottom and then slice it straight across the leaf. If you've got an unwieldy bunch, just stack it. It's not very fussy, because you're just going to saute and you're going to keep cooking until it's wilted down. It does turn a bit brown, but it really will mellow out the flavor. Collard greens. Collard greens are a dark leafy green vegetable. I like to steam them, saute them, sometimes marinate them and eat them raw, but only when they're super fresh. The way to prepare them is to cut off their tough stems. Just take off a couple of inches. If you were to saute, you might like to cut them quite fine. If you were to steam, I usually cut them in inch pieces. You can take out the stem, but the nutrients from the soil come up through the stem into the leaves, so it's actually a really nutritious part. If you want to take them off and say juice them or cut them up and use them in soup, you can just do it with your hands by tearing down like that, and then you can cut this and just cut across the leaf. If I'm leaving in the stem, I would do like this. And then if you want to do it really fine like a chiffonade, it's actually better to stack them up like this and then roll them. And this could be marinated or lightly sauteed or added to a soup at the end. I think that's it. Swiss chard. This is rainbow chard. Can be cooked in a variety of ways, similar to spinach and kale and collards. You can do a few things. Eat the stems and cook them, just cutting straight across is fine. Or you can do this and take out the stem and layer it up like this, which I can just fold a few times, thinly slice like this. Or you could dice it a little bit, like just squares, If you're steaming, you can also just steam the whole leaf. If you're sauteing, take the stems out and cut them up. You can cut them up nice and fine like this. If you cut it like this, you saute it first and then add the leaves last when this is tender, starts to get a bit soft. But no reason to throw these out because they're so beautiful and colourful and delicious too. Fennel. Fennel is a juicy, delicious vegetable with an anisey kind of flavour. I love to shave it raw for a salad, cut off the stems, save these for a stock or broth, take off the toughest sort of root end, cut it in half lengthways, face it down, cut it in half again, and then take out the core. You then shave it lengthways. On a mandolin is really easy. It's much harder to cut this as fine, so you can save some of the fronds to garnish or stir through, just plucked off and just put on top of the salad. So you can use it all. It tastes way better than licorice, I think. Leek. Leeks are part of the onion family. Anywhere you'd find an onion, you can use a leek. So to cut a leek, cut off the end. You trim off the top part that I'm not going to use, slit it down the center of one of these leaves like this, and not all the way through, just go like that. And then with running water, run the water down through the leaves and wash away all this dirt. See all this dirt? Cut it in half. And then you can leave it in large chunks and slowly simmer leeks, like with a bit of olive oil, and put a lid on it so that it really steams and falls apart as a delicious French dish. Or you could cut it on an angle like this. If you were to eat it raw, just use the tender light green part and then just slice it really, really thin, just so that it's not too strong oniony flavour. And then you can just separate it and use it like you would a scallion. Iceberg lettuce. Iceberg lettuce is 99% water, so it's very, very juicy and crisp if it's a good one. It doesn't have a lot of flavour because it's just about all water. So cut it in half again, like that, then thinly slice. Wash the outside, but you don't need to pull apart the leaves and wash it. There's no dirt or grit getting inside. A little bit goes a long way. Kale. This is lacinato kale. This kale is usually the most reliable and not too tough, so you just pinch off the leaves from here and then just run your hand down. Now this kale can be sliced really thinly again and used raw, or you can stir this into a nice white bean soup so it wilts at the end of cooking. You don't really want to cook this ahead, it tastes better fresh. If you are roasting, use this one, taking off the stems and breaking it into bite-sized pieces. And then purple kale can be a little tough sometimes, and I do think it's better to cook it. If you wanted to leave the stems in, you can just cut them down the middle and then just cut across. If you want to use your stems, get them together and just cut straight across. And use this when you're cooking carrots and celery for a soup. Like that. Butternut squash. It's in season in fall and there's a lot of different things you can do with it. One of the best things to do with squash besides making soup is to roast it. You can leave the skin on, but mostly I take it off. And I like to put a towel down because when you start peeling it, it bleeds and gets very sticky and slippery, and you can slip and cut yourself if you're losing control of your peeler. So peeling it just the full length like this. And just do the bottom. And then the top too. The best way is to cut the neck off, like that, and then cut this base in half and take out the seeds. Just scrape. If you're just roasting it, you can really do any shape you like. Just take off the base. Then you might like to have shapes like this, or you might like to have larger cubed pieces like this. Then for the neck part, take off the end and cut it down the middle, cut it in like that, and then do the same. You just want it the same size. Kabocha Squash. Kabocha squash is one of the most densest and sweetest tasting squashes you can buy. Their flesh is so good in soups, stews, or steaming because it's so moist and creamy. Their skins can be really, really tough. So what I like to do is use an axe. I think it's a good idea to put a towel underneath because it's going to move. And there's the inside of kabocha. You don't have to take the seeds out actually, but if you want to take them out, use a spoon like that and just scoop it out. Then you need to cut it up. You can leave the skin on if you're steaming or roasting, and if you've got a really sharp knife, now it's more manageable, you can kind of do this action to go through. And I think the nicest way to cut it is in wedges like this. That is a kabocha. Tomatillo. Tomatillos are a tomato family member, and they have a husk on the outside that you need to peel off before you use them. You don't need a knife actually, because the best way to prepare them is to boil them, blanch them until they burst, or put them under a grill until the skins char a little bit. So this is what the inside looks, just like a tomato, and not great raw. They're also very sticky once you take off this husk, so don't take it off until you plan on using them. It's just like a green tomato, raw. Still better cooked though. Tomato. Tomato. Tomatoes are the best thing when they're in season, and that season is pretty short. When they're in season, my favorite way to cut them is to just take out the stem end and cut them in wedges like this. And then just olive oil, salt, and that's really it because they taste so amazing. Zucchini. Zucchini is a member of the squash family, and it's in season in summer. You can cut them in chunks and roast them. You can roll cut them and then steam it. You can slice them in long thin strips like this and grill it. The other way to prepare a zucchini is to peel it and create ribbons. And then you can make a delicious pine nut dressing with lemon, really yummy. Toss it over this and it's a really nice, different textured way to eat it. There's a lot of different things you can do with a humble zucchini. Cucumber. Cucumbers are very versatile. They are absolutely delicious just sliced as they come. You can cut them on a mandolin like this, very thinly, and use that as a pickle. It can be cut into large slices like this and used as a crudité, thinly sliced as a sandwich, cut into rounds. That's cucumber. Chayote. In Australia, we call these chocos. They are a squash family member, similar to a zucchini, very mild tasting. You can eat the skin. You need to take out the seeds though. We used to just eat it steamed, and we would just cut it like this. And you could also do that to roast. It's a very mild taste, sort of, it's like cucumber and zucchini kind of mixed because it's crunchy like a cucumber, but very mild like a zucchini, yeah. Pepper. Peppers are a large family of vegetables, and they can be used in so many different ways. To prep a bell pepper, cut it in half lengthways, take out the seeds and the membrane. It's a little bit bitter. You can just do it with your fingers, and then you can decide, do you want slices like this to be eaten raw as a snack, as a crudité, or larger pieces that you might like to roast to then put on a sandwich or add to a salad. Jalapeno pepper. The best way I think to cut this is to just go around the seeds like this. Just roll it. The seeds are really spicy. The flesh may or may not be spicy. You really just have to test it by going like this, just to see if it's burning your tongue. So you can slice it up like this in long strips and then just dice it, and then you can use that in a salsa like that. And that's peppers. Bitter melon. Bitter melon is a member of the watermelon family. It can be eaten in a variety of ways. You don't need to peel it. You do need to take out the seeds though. So I would cut it long ways like this and take out these seeds by scraping with a spoon. Just like you would, say, a squash. Say you were to saute it, you could cut it on an angle like this. If you wanted to steam, you could do it a bit thicker. And let's see how it tastes raw. Bitter. Very bitter. I'd say cook it. Forget that raw bit. Sauteed, I think I'd do first if I had to use it. Anyone want to try it? Eggplant. Eggplants need to be cooked first and foremost, and cooked properly. If you don't cook them enough, they are hard. They should be soft and succulent and really melt in your mouth. If they're not in season, I recommend cutting them how you want to cut them, mixing them with salt and setting aside for an hour to drain to get out a bitter taste, and then rinsing them really well before you prepare them. They are often sliced and pan fried. You do need a lot of oil to roast or fry them because they are spongy and absorbent. So if you were to do that for a sandwich, say, you would just slice it like this, and after you've salted it and drained it, if you need to do that, you then pan fry them. If I was going to roast it, I cut it into sort of wedge shapes like this. So there's a lot of different ways to use eggplant, but not raw. You don't want to eat it raw. Radish. Radishes are delicious eaten raw, however you can roast them or saute them. So I love to shave them by plucking off the end. Leave at least some of the greens when you're shaving them because you have a handle then to use. And you can shave them like that. If you want, you can cut them into little wedges like this and steam them, which a lot of people don't think to do. And they look really pretty. Turmeric. Turmeric is now very famous. It is full of nutritional benefits and there's so many reasons to add it to your diet. It comes dried as a powder, but fresh is the way to go. You need to peel it. Then you'd cut it lengthways like this, stack it up just like ginger, and thinly slice and then dice. If you want to cook it, I would suggest dicing it finely like that. That's turmeric. Ginger. It is delicious and very medicinal. It's fantastic if you have a cold or a sore throat. The best way to prepare it is to break off a manageable piece and peel it first. But the least wasteful way is to peel it with a spoon because you really just take off just what you need with the skin. You can slice it or you can grate it like that, or you can cut it into little tiny minced pieces. And then if you really want to add more ginger flavor at the end of cooking, just squeeze in the juice. Beetroot. This is a beet. There are a lot of different things you can do with a beet. You can boil them whole, which is a fantastic way to marinate them. Without even washing it, you can just put it in a pot of boiling water, and then once it's cooked through to the center, you just peel off the skin under running water. Then you can chop that up, marinate it with oil and vinegar, and it is my favorite way to eat it. You can also eat them raw, but they need to be peeled, and you can shave them nice and thin. Or you can use a box grater and just grate it and use that as a salad. Carrot. They're really good when they're freshly dug, and you really shouldn't do anything to them. You should just eat them straight like that because they taste so sweet and delicious. Roasted is a really nice way to do a carrot, and to do that with this size carrot, cut it down the middle like that, and then you can just place it on a roasting pan face down because you get a nice golden edge on it. The other thing I like to do with a carrot, shave it with a peeler and create ribbons, which is just a nice way to add it to a salad rather than grating it. You can take off the outer skin if you want, or you can just scrub it. And then you could use the inner core in a soup. And then, yeah, don't waste this. Either juice it if you juice, or chop it up for your base of your soup. Carrots. Parsnip. I think the best way to cook it is to peel it, which I don't always say, but the skin can be a little bitter. And turning it into a pureed vegetable soup or roasted, I think is the best way to do it. Peel it first. You could do like a roll cut for roasting, is kind of nice. Or you could cut it in long strips like this and roast it like that. You could also cut it like a carrot. Turnip. Turnip can be used in all the ways you would a parsnip, a carrot, even a potato, although it has a little bit more of a pungent flavour and a lot of people don't love it. It does need to be peeled. I would take off the end, cut it in half, and then I would cut it like this into sort of wedges and then into odd shapes, or you could cut it into sort of wedge type pieces like that. That's a turnip. Potato. They are probably mostly used for mashing or roasting and stuffing. You have also sweet potatoes, coloured little baby potatoes. This is purple inside. This one is pink skin but white inside. You usually peel a potato. If you're going to mash it, boil them first. Or roast a sweet potato whole and scoop out the flesh. Cut it and dice it. Cut like that and boiled. Add rosemary or other herbs. This is what a sweet potato looks like inside. That's a potato. Taro. Taro root is a starchy root vegetable. This is what it looks like on the inside. It needs to be peeled and then thinly shaved before it's fried into chips. It can be made into fritters. It can be cooked with coconut milk and mashed. So to peel it, you can use a peeler like this, but it gets stuck in your peeler because it's so fibrous. So cutting as little of the flesh as possible. Chop it up and boil it to then mash it. But if you're just chopping it up, it doesn't really matter the shape. You could just go like this. That's taro root. Rutabaga. Rutabagas, which are also called Swedes in England, are an unusual vegetable. They sort of get stronger and a bit spicier tasting, if that makes any sense, or sort of more pungent as they age. And they're often mislabeled as turnips or golden turnips, don't be fooled. They are a starchy root vegetable, so they can be made into a pureed vegetable soup. I actually love to steam them when they're freshly harvested and then blend with cauliflower and use it as a topping instead of potato for like a shepherd's pie. But you can just cut them like this when you're cooking them in a soup, add them to sauteed onions and garlic, any flavors you want, and then add the rutabaga, water, cook till tender and blend. That's a rutabaga. Daikon. Daikon is a member of the radish family, but it's a lot milder. You can quick pickle daikon by peeling it first. Cut it in half and shave it on a mandolin, or just thinly slice it. And it makes a really delicious pickle just with vinegar and salt. You could just slice it in long, thin strips and use it to dip into a hummus dip or any kind of dip like this. It's really delicious, juicy. It's really, really delicious. Jicama. You want to choose one that's very firm and unblemished if possible. I love eating it raw, and to do that I need to peel it, cut it in half first. So you just cut slices like this. If you want to cut like for a salad or a slaw, I just stack it like that and then do like a julienne cut like this. Yeah, but raw. That's how I like it. Lotus root. Lotus root grows in water. It can be dried and purchased that way, and then you can soak it and use it in stews and things. First of all, I'll show you what it looks like inside. It's beautiful. It's got all these beautiful holes. And then I would peel the outside, cut it really thinly, and steam it or simmer it. Often you cut it a bit thicker and put it in a pan like this, and salt and season it a little bit of water, and then cook it until it's soft. It makes your stews look really beautiful. Artichoke. Artichokes are quite special because a lot of preparation is involved in getting this gnarly vegetable down into an edible thing. One way that's very quick and easy is to cut off the end like that, cut off this end, and steam it until it's tender. If you want to go further, you really have to break off a lot of leaves. Down to the more tender leaves, peel the stem, then you can cut it in half and take out the choke. And all that fluffy inside you want to get out. And then you can quarter this and roast it like this, braise it like this, or thinly slice it and saute it. You can also, if you get right down to the heart, you can shave it and eat it raw. That's an artichoke. Cauliflower. Cauliflower is part of the broccoli cruciferous family. The best way to prepare it is to cut off the leaves like that, and you can just go around. And then you want to cut off each floret too, like that. You can just go around and cut them off. If you turn it into cauliflower rice, break it up into smaller florets or cut it, and then put it in a food processor and grind it until it's light and fluffy. Don't overdo it because it'll just end up mushy. That's cauliflower. Romanesco. Romanesco is a variety of cauliflower and has basically the same flavor. It's much harder to cut into florets, however you can do it, but they join quite close together at the top. I do the same thing I do with cauliflower and take off the leaves and the stem. I would just cut it into wedges. This is what it looks like inside, so it's not green all the way through. And just cut it like this and roast pieces like that. That is Romanesco. Broccoli. This is how I like to prepare it. Cutting off the florets like this, and I just go around and just cut them all off. And then when you get to the center, they're a bit smaller, but that's okay. You can just cut it like that. Then each one, you can just cut through the center and cut them into whatever size you like. So that's the florets. And then the way to use the stem is you need to cut off the sides or the skin. And it's hard to do with a peeler. You kind of need to take off because it's very tough. So you can see it's kind of woody and fibrous. And the inside is delicious because it's very tender. And it can be also just steamed or sauteed and cut into any size that you like. And you could actually eat this raw. It's really delicious. And that's broccoli. I hope this video inspires you to eat more vegetables, because no matter what diet you eat, more vegetables is always a good idea. Head to the farmer's market and check out some of the things you found here today, and happy cooking.